In this video, we're going to go over the statistics module within TPS. What the statistics module allows you to do is track and record certain statistics such as income, charges, visits, and whatnot. You'll be able to calculate them, view them, print out the tables of the stats, and even graph them if you need to. Let's go ahead and get started by opening the Start menu here. And if you've purchased the statistics module, go ahead and go here on the left under Applications and click the last option, which is Statistics. I'm going to select my binoculars and choose the charges statistic. Here we can see the layout of the statistics window. Up here we have the code for this particular stat and then the name of it. So it's charges and it's called total charges. Here we can select the method of which the statistic is calculated. We're going to leave it at provider. Here this active checkbox determines whether this stat calculates actively or not. This service box allows you to select specific services that are calculated. Here we have the last calculated date. As of right now, it's calculated only a few moments ago. I can blink that out so it's empty. Click Calculate Now, and it'll calculate the stat back up from the beginning of time to the current time. Here we have the statistic calculation code. This is the code that comes with the statistic that allows it to function properly. Please do not alter this code without assistance from Eon Tech Support. Otherwise, you could cause errors when trying to run the stat in the future. This goes for the same down here for Calculate When, and this stat depends on these stats. Up here we have a Notes/Explanation of Statistics box. Here is where you can type information based on what the statistic does. Certain stats come preloaded with information in here describing what the stat accomplishes, but you can of course edit that for your own purposes if you'd like. Something like that. Calculates total charges for the office. Once you've calculated your stat, we have two extra tabs up here at the top. Statistic Detailed Data will give you a brief layout of the information that was pulled. Back to the beginning of the program, starting in 2007 all the way down to 2013, we can see information broken down by business, provider, and then how much the value is, in this case a charge. Certain stats have multiple values. In this case, the charge statistic only has one, so the second column is all zeros. But basically what this is telling you is for this business, with this provider, on this date, $100 was charged total. If you see a particular date that reads an error, or what you think is an error, you can manually change this data. For instance, maybe this was supposed to be 440. I can do so, and now the stat has changed. This does not change the data located within the program, however. This only changed the statistic that I pulled up via this window. If I were to close this out and run the stat again, it would go back to $340. So if it is truly an error in the data, you need to go ahead and look into what's going on so you can make a correction at the source. The manual entry is more for removing things or adding things that don't need to be taken into account for this particular stat. Along these lines, we have the Add a New Data Line and Delete Data Line. For instance, perhaps this is too old and not applicable. I can click it, delete, and now it's gone. If I run the stats again, next time 2007's date will be right back where it was. Again, this only has to do with the actual stats we see on the screen and not the data held within the program. Maybe I want to add a particular data line. I could select a business, a provider, enter in my own date, value, and now it's incorporated into my statistics. To reiterate, if I were to run this stat again, it would not take into account this newly added information because this is only pertaining to the statistics window I've pulled up, not the actual data the program has stored. Once you're finished viewing and possibly editing any information in here, you can go to the final tab up here at the top called Statistic Graph and Printing. From here, the statistics that we've pulled already can be sorted by business, provider, carrier, carrier type, and extra information such as patients, screenings, and referral information. I'm going to leave this blank to pull all of it and show you how we can create a graph and print layout to view the information in different ways. I'm going to go ahead and change this back to 2011. And then here we have a frequency from which the data is displayed. We can select daily or monthly as well, but I'm going to leave it at weekly for now. And then I'm going to calculate the statistic. And here we can see a graph is generated based on the stats in the system. Here we have our axes for the amount of charges, and down here we have the dates for the time. And over here on the left we can print the graph, or we can print a data table based on the information pulled. Quickly selecting preview, we see what the graph printout looks like. And here we have the data table, showing what happened on that day for all businesses, doctors, and carriers through this time frame. For instance, on 7/16/2011, $570 in charges was taken in for all businesses, doctors, and carriers within the program. If you'd like this information in an Excel file, you can do so by going back to the statistic detailed data, going to the bottom right, and clicking Export to Excel Spreadsheet. Note that you'll probably need Excel before you can view this, or a similar type program that can read Excel files. But once you click the button, you can select a space to save the information, such as the TPS 2000 folder or your desktop. Name the file something like Charges 2011, and then click Save. From here you can go and open the Excel file, edit it, and rearrange it however you need to. Gives you a lot more control over your statistics after they've been generated. The graph display can also be edited in a variety of ways. By double-clicking, I open the Edit section of the graph with information about the stats in this datasheet here. Closing this, I can right-click certain axes, click Format Axis, and change information depending on my needs, such as the patterns. I could do the scale. If I don't start at 0 typically, maybe I start at $300 as a minimum charge in a typical time frame, or I could raise the maximum, the major unit, and so forth. If you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, a lot of this will be very familiar to you. You can select the font, some general number information, or the alignment. Clicking OK, I can close the screen, go to the bottom axis here, right-click it, and format that one instead, selecting date ranges, fonts, alignments, and whatnot. If I right-click the graph, I can change the chart type. Maybe I like pie instead. And it gives me a different layout for something else. Then I could preview the graph. Now I have a nice pie chart instead of a line graph. This allows you to customize your statistics in different ways, allowing you to view them and calculate them in the best manner possible. Let's go ahead and go over some other statistics. Click my binoculars. Select the CPT code statistic. What we have here is some code with a 5 and an asterisk. What this means is that any code entered that begins with a 5 will be picked up by the system and then calculated. For instance, if I left this code alone, as 5 and then asterisk, and then ran calculate now, any CPT code starting with a 5 would be calculated and display in this table with the units delivered under the value column. We currently don't have any CPT codes that start with 5, so nothing came up. If I were to go back here and enter in a 9, blank out the date, and calculate now, we can see that 87 statistics were created, and that a CPT code starting with 9 was delivered 1 time on this date, 6 times on this date, and so forth and so on. From here we could edit the information as discussed before, graph it if we need to, by re-entering information over here and calculating it again. Or we could go back and run a different statistic. If I wanted to, I could enter a more specific code in, such as 99202. Blank out my time, and then calculate now. 6 codes were created in that statistic run, and here we can see those exact dates for those codes delivered. So from here, you can see that you can run a group of CPT codes, like those that start with 9894, or a specific code, such as the 99202. You can organize it by provider once you get to this last tab here, such as just selecting Jonathan Greenwood or Mark Sloan. From there, you can calculate the graph or print a layout of the data table, or even export the information to Excel as discussed. You have a lot of opportunities and choices here when it comes to the statistics, so I highly recommend that you use it when you need to. Opening the binoculars one last time, we can see there are quite a few statistics that come preloaded with the program, such as a discount statistic, income, those who didn't show for visits, those who did show for visits, and so forth. Note that a lot of reports within the program pull these statistics into a more organized layout, but if you need some specific stuff or you only need a certain kind of code, you can come here for a more hands-on manual approach. We'll be going over some of the different reports in a little bit.